Good morning and welcome to Silk Life. We're continuing with our series on prayer, but you'll notice there's a different backdrop. Those of you that have been tuning in over recent weeks, this is the back wall of the stage of the Silk Life Centre. It's a real sight to behold, yes? So we're just trialling our hybrid meeting setting at the moment of some of us here in the room and some people still connecting on Zoom at home. And obviously you guys still connecting through YouTube and Facebook as well. So let me plunge right on in, because last week we asked the question, what would it look like to architect our lives around apprenticeship to Jesus? Jesus' invitation is to travel through life at his side, learning how to do life. And if you want to experience the life of Jesus, my advice to you would be to try as far as possible to adopt the lifestyle of Jesus. Because the invitation for followers of Jesus is to model our lives on his and to learn the unforced rhythms of grace and learn how to behave like a child of God. How do you learn that? You learn it by watching him. So, let's do that this morning. Let's examine the first day of the ministry of Jesus. So I'm reading from Mark 1, verse 21 to 39. And it goes like this. They went into Capernaum. And immediately on the Sabbath, Jesus entered the synagogue and was teaching. And the people were astonished at Jesus' teaching. For he taught them as one who had authority, not like the scribes had. And immediately there was in the synagogue a man with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, "What have you done with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be silent and come out." And the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying out loud with a loud voice, came out. And they were all amazed. And they questioned among themselves, saying, "Who is this? A new teaching with authority. He commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." And at once Jesus' fame spread everywhere, throughout all the surrounding region of Galilee. And Jesus left the synagogue and entered the house of Simon and Andrew and James with John. Now, Simon's mother-in-law lay ill with a fever. And immediately they told him about her. And he came and took her by the hand and lifted her up, and the fever left her, and she began to serve Jesus and the rest of them. That evening at sundown, they brought to him all who were sick and oppressed by demons. And the whole city was gathered together at the door. And he healed many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. Now get this. Verse 35. Rising very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed. And Simon and those who were with him searched for him. And they found him and said, "Everyone is looking for you." And he said to them, "Let's go to the next towns, that I may preach there also. For that is why I came out." And so he went throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and casting out demons. This was day one. First day on the new job. Jesus is teaching in the Capernaum synagogue with his new team, while the audience marvels at his authority. A demon-possessed man cries out, "I know who you are, you're the Holy One of God." Jesus rebukes the demon sharply and effortlessly casts it out. The crowd is stunned. After the synagogue service, Jesus returns to Peter's house for the Sabbath meal. Jesus' mother-in-law is in bed with a fever. Jesus takes she gets up and then she starts making lunch. And word of the healing and all of this just races through the seaside city of Capernaum. But the tradition of the elders, Jewish community, doesn't permit healing on the Sabbath unless it's life-threatening. So the whole town waits till evening. Can you imagine that? You know there's a guy healing down the road. But because it's the Sabbath, the whole town waits till evening. Like, I'd have wrestled a bear to get there. But somehow the religious culture means you can't do that. You've got to wait. Got to wait. Until sun goes down, and then bang, it all goes bonkers. The whole city, we're told, gathers at the door. I don't know if that's a euphemism, I don't know if that's the whole lot. But imagine the streets around the house, like hundreds of figures casting shadows from flickering oil lamps. And Jesus heals far into the night. Children, elderly, sick, new, deaf, sorrowful. I just dream of being that effective. He's articulate, he's wise, he's full of authority, he's relational, he takes others with him in team, he releases ignorance, sickness and spiritual oppression, he's effective, he's efficient, he's compassionate, he's the model of authority and focus, he sees the big picture and the detail and the crowd and the individual, he's just on it, first day, on the job. I do want to say your effectiveness on your front line matters. Whether you're an accountant, a cleaner, policeman, you bring order out of disorder. Medics, nurses, paramedics, social workers and carers providing for the needy. Local government make provision for the smooth running of the town. Sales, tradesmen provide services that enrich lives. Shelf stackers, farmers, estate agents, etc. Music, artists, performers, they bring joy. Parents bring joy. People who make great coffee and great food, they bring beauty to my life. Decorators, hairdressers, dentists, engineers. How much did you miss your dentist this year? How much did you miss your hairdresser this year? Teachers, childminders, they release potential in children. ICT system designers, parents, grandparents, fitness coaches. Joe, we mentioned it, didn't we, previously? Adam and Eve were given these tasks to rule, subdue and multiply right back in Eden. It's God's intention to give humanity dignity through meaningful work. Your front line, your home, your community, your job, they matter. Your effectiveness matters. So live on the front line as an ambassador for Christ. Live with integrity, work to the best of your ability, serve humbly, notice the isolated, protect the vulnerable, allow the rigour of your work to shape your character in discipline and faithfulness. Allow your colleagues to build your muscle for loving your neighbour. Work for Jesus, not just your boss. Make beautiful things that reflect the creative power of the Creator. And if you make systems, make them great systems that work so well that it is beautiful. And if you put food on the shelves, make those shelves sing out the order and peace of Christ. If you are a barista, make 1 million ice skinny mocha soya lattes to show the world what it looks like when Jesus makes ice skinny mocha soya lattes. You are an adopted child of God, grafted into his family, and you represent him. You know, when my kids go to school, they represent what it is to be an Atkinson. Their teachers do not know me, but in my kids they see a representation of Atkinsonism. Your colleagues don't get to see Jesus smash it on his first day at the office, but they can see you. Jesus had a great first day at the office. What about his second day though? Was he a one-hit wonder? Picture the second day of the conference, if you like. First day, smashed it. Second day, we'll get the worship rolling. Get the speaker up. Let the miracles come rolling in. Get it on social media. Get the posters out. The first day was epic. And so we rock up for the second day of the conference. We rock up late because we're Christians. There's a slight technical hitch. Just grab a coffee, guys. Grab a seat. Say hello to someone you don't know. Jesus isn't here. Where is he? He got up at sunrise as one of the disciples. Went out. Quiet place. The crowds gather, but he still isn't back yet. When they do find Jesus, he says, we're going to go to the next town. The disciples are all set for day 2. But Jesus, he's moving on. Let me ask you, how much of our lives do we do business as usual, completely oblivious to the fact that Jesus is actually doing something else? Maybe we just don't notice. Maybe we just do the same today as we did yesterday, because yesterday worked, so let's just do it again. It was super anointed yesterday, let's make today like yesterday. Our workplace, our church, maybe marriage, parenting, friendships. We started out full of faith, super creative, fully present, even fun, freshly commissioned by God, but now, could it be just going through the motions? Faith is over the hills and far away. Jesus is doing something else, and we're running on muscle memory. Don't try and do your life without him. Let's ask the question, why did Jesus disappear? The passage says to us, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went to a solitary place where he prayed. We thought about this last week, this exclusive connection with God that was not new to Jesus. He's actually just come out of the desert where he was alone for 40 days. Before that, he was affirmed at his baptism. But even before that, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and he was God in the beginning. Jesus had always been in loving communion with the Father and the Spirit. He likes it there. The prayerful state of connection with God in his natural habitat. It's the first thing he wants to do when he wakes up. For Jesus, it's not about the conversation, it's about the person. Focusing on the conversation is like trying to drive, focusing on the windscreen. You've got to look through it. The conversation is the vehicle to get to know the person, God. Pete Greig says, prayer is relational, not transactional. So day 2 of his public ministry. Knowing that he has a crazy, busy day ahead, Jesus gets up early to go to his natural habitat. Knowing that people are going to want a slice of him all day long, he goes out to a quiet place to be in his natural habitat. It is the instinct of the Son to want to be with the Father. As adopted sons, we must grow in that instinct. Get this. Day 2, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him, and they found him, and they exclaimed, Jesus, everyone is looking for you. Jesus is missing. The disciples go looking for him. Everyone is looking for you. Jesus, what are you up to? Day 2, they already think they know better than him. Day 2, they're already scorning Jesus. Day 2, Jesus, people are looking for you. What are they thinking? But how often do we communicate the same thing? Every time I go through the day without praying, I'm actually saying to Jesus, Jesus, whatever you're doing right now, I know better. This is my agenda, and you're supposed to be over here. Sometimes I don't pray because I'm up to my eyes in it, digging it out. say, I've got this one, cut, thrust, stab. It's okay, Jesus, cut, thrust, stab, kick, punch, I'm on it. Holy moly, I'm done, I'm a nervous wreck, I'm beat. Maybe I'll sack it all off, just give up, take a break from God. It is the most bizarre cycle, and yet I think too many of us do it too often. Why do I insist on burning myself out before I'm willing to hold my hands up to find out what Jesus is doing? Our weakness is the channel that allows us to access His grace. The warning lights of our heart are the signals of our need of God. The size of the task in front of us, it was never ours to do on our own. Think about it. Go and make disciples of all nations. I can't make one, let alone win the nations. I have labour pains that tell me I need God. Because the fruit that He's asked me to bear is beyond my own capacity and ability. I can't do it on my own. That's why we call it supernatural. If God doesn't come through, then I'm wasted. The outworking of God's purposes for your life are not restricted to the church meeting. Not for any of us. You'll spend 2 hours a week in church. And you'll spend 166 hours a week somewhere else. You might spend 100 hours in church a year. And you'll spend 8,500 hours a year somewhere else. The church meeting is not the extent of your relationship with God. The church meeting cannot be the only place you experience God. The church meeting is not the extent of God's purpose for your life, and the church meeting is not your front line, and your front line matters too much for you to get that wrong. Let's get real practical for a moment, shall we? What disciplines, what actions do we learn from this passage? Let's look again. I'm going to read you, you'll be able to memorise this verse by the time we finish. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went to a solitary place where he prayed. Now, this isn't a rule book. You can pray any time of day. You can pray in your house, and you can definitely pray with other people. That's all okay. But there's some fairly obvious principles in this passage, underlying choices of Jesus. So let's look again. You might want to get a pen and paper. This is rocket science, this. You might need a whiteboard to draw some equations on. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went to the solitary place where he prayed. Praying at the start of the day sets your mind on a trajectory for the rest of the day. It demonstrates a willingness to keep God at the centre, and praying at the start of the day allows God to equip you for the day before it happens. So it's not a rule that you can only pray at the start of the day, but there's some fairly good rationale for saying that's a great way to start the day. Before anything else happens, let's surrender the day to God, and let's allow him the time to equip us for the day ahead. I told you it's rocket science, didn't I? Okay. Here we go. Number 2. He got up. Get out of bed. There we go. This is what you're paying me for, folks. He got out of bed. Okay? But he actually left the house. I find prayer outside actually really helpful. But it isn't a rule. But the principle underneath is being solitary is definitely a good idea. It removes distractions. I suspect Jesus snuck out early, not because he particularly wanted to be outside, but because getting up and moving around the house was suddenly going to garner attention from everybody else in the building. So rather than disturb everybody else, and then rather than have everybody wanting his attention, he went out. So he could be alone. Making time to be alone with God demonstrates a sense of priority, of focus. Jesus did it with God. We do it with our Father. disciples should also see value in. So we should pray. If it was good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for us. So how do you get started? Some of you will be brilliant at this. Some of you are on a whole other spiritual plane, and I applaud you. I'm like, great. You've got permission to just start communing with God. You don't even need to listen to these last few minutes. But for those of us mere mortals that maybe appreciate a little bit of a toolkit along the way, let's get even more practical. So my top tip for you today, you'll notice each sermon has probably ended up with one top tip that I'd like you to try. This is the one for today. Is to have some Bible verses to hand, whether it's in a notepad, whether you've typed them on your phone, or whether you've screenshotted them, saved them, whatever it might be. But have some Bible verses to hand that naturally encourage you, that talk to you about the character of God. So I say that deliberately. Talk to you about the character of God. Actually, it's very easy to find Bible verses that talk about us, but sometimes we neglect the character of God ones. So I just point you in that direction. Find verses that talk about the character of God. And then at the start of the day, just engage with those verses. Slowly, just kind of boil it down as you think it through. Allow your spirit and your mind to engage with the truth of those verses. Don't overcomplicate it. Actually boil it down, make it simple. Engage with it in a way that starts to resonate. And then without rushing, turn those passages back to God in a form of prayer. So I'll give you an example. One of my favourites, I think also one of Chrissy's favourites, Hebrews 1 verse 3, says, Jesus is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature. Jesus is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature. So you'll notice that is a verse that talks about the character of God. It contains an important truth for us to grasp. And so I would just begin to mentally hunker down on the verse, think it through, and then turn it back to God in prayer a little bit like this, just really simply. Jesus, the Bible says, you're the radiance of the glory of God. You are literally radiant with the glory of God. You contain the glory of God, and it is bursting out. You are the exact representation of the glory of God. You're like an imprint of his nature. The nature of God is displayed for me through your character, through your teaching, through your lifestyle. Jesus, through your death on the cross, I see the incredible love of God. Through your treatment of the sick and marginalised, I see the compassion of God. Through your resurrection, I see the incredible power of God. Through your teaching, I see the wisdom of God and your distaste for injustice. In you, I see the radiant glory of God. I just pause and worship. Would you reveal yourself to me through this day and capture my heart for this glory? And that might be it. And following this, I might just look through my diary and kind of pray through the appointments for the day. And I'd pay attention to my emotions and my thoughts and turn those back to God, my excitement and my anxiety, my patience, my peace, my irritation. And most weeks at some point I will read through the fruits of the Spirit listed in Galatians and ask the Spirit to trigger fruitfulness in my character because I need it. And then I would invariably ask God to guide my instincts through the day because there's always something around the corner that I didn't predict. Pete Greig's phrase, those of you that are doing the small group series, says keep it real, keep it simple, keep it going. You might want to set alarms on your phone that prompt you to stop for 2 minutes during the day. Morning coffee, lunchtime, afternoon brew, home time. Some of you drink a lot of brew, so there might be several stops through there. Before you put the kids to bed, while you're putting the kids to bed, great to model this to them. As you settle down for the evening, before you start to flick on Netflix, just 2 minutes during the credits. As you lie down at night, do you know, whatever works for you. Just simple breath prayers that take 1 and 2 minutes to meditate on the truth of God and incline your heart to him. Just observe the example of Jesus, the prayerfulness is his natural habitat. And it's the first thing he wants to do when he wakes up. It's not about a list of requests. It's about the person, his Father. So clear, so simple, so rich, and so fruitful. Just remember those first 2 days of the ministry, how fruitful Jesus was. This is the privilege of our inheritance as children of God. This is why we started here, week 1 of this series, considering our status as adopted children of God. So my encouragement for you this week is to give it a go. And please do get back to us. Let us know how you're getting on. And next week, we'll continue with our journey of learning how Jesus prayed and how we can structure our lives as disciples